The Marrow Thieves-Chapter on the road. Everything was different. We were faster without a youngest and oldest, but now we were without deep roots, without the acute need to protect and make better. And I had taken up a spot that opened up in the middle of it all, somewhere between desperation and resolve. We decided to find the resistance, and we knew there was a pocket of it near Española. We needed information to figure out which school Minerva would have been taken to. Chiboy and Mig never questioned the plan. We moved the same way as always. Mig's our leader, Chiboy as the scout, but now I was with them, helping to shape our path forward. After all, I was the one who put us here. It was a burden so heavy I could barely sleep at night for lack of breath. What if I was leading us to our deaths? What if we were walking into a place full of more trickster Indians? What if there were no Indians at all? Instead of sleep, I counted the stars and kept 6 on the individual breathing of each remaining member sleeping in their tents around me. The weather was shifting fast, and you couldn't see your breath anymore. Not even in the hour before the sun rose. Meg and I were collecting water from our tarp traps when we found the first sign that we were getting close. "French, here." He motioned me over to a thin elm in front of a semicircle of pine. He pointed out a small dent in the side of the trunk. I bent closer and the dent turned into a scar, and the scar revealed itself to be a series of deliberate cuts. "What is it?" Meg ran his fingers over the marks and gave a short laugh. "Huh, I think there's syllabics." "What's that?" "That is our written language." I reached out to feel the language on my skin for the first time since Minerva had breathed her words over my forehead when she thought I was sleeping during her nightly check-ins. An arrow, a line, a couple of dots. What does it mean? I don't know syllabics. Isaac was the linguist, but I do know it means there are niche close by who do. He sounded more hopeful about an impending meeting than I would have imagined, especially after the last one. Maybe he felt something in the tree that I didn't. The next day we spent taking stock and repacking our gear. We needed to know exactly what we had if we were getting close to Española, and we needed to make sure there was nothing unnecessary left in our packs. Speed and agility were the benefits of a tighter group, and we needed both now. "Hey, French, you want to come with me to look for mushrooms?" It was Rose. Something about her voice made my neck prickle. It had to be her voice because there was nothing exciting about looking for squat fungus in a bush. "Sure." I tried to play it cool. We didn't have much time to hang out these days, not with the ferocious pace I'd set and the breadth that my self-assigned duties. Moodiness, anxiety for the safety of every person, insomnia. "So go then." She motioned to me to follow with a tilt of her head, her long hair loose against her faded gray t-shirt. I got up from where I'd set up by the tent to count and recount ammo and followed her through the pines. The forest was quiet in there, like a room so full of small voices it hummed with silence. We walked for almost an hour, just listening, enjoying being close to each other without the distraction of the others and the reminder that we were so much less than before. She stopped short in front of me, and I almost slammed into her back. "See mushrooms?" She shook her head. "No, but I do smell something." I opened my nostrils and tried to inhale slowly. She was right. There was something else there, something different in the woods. "I think it's water." Her voice was a whisper, as if she could startle the water and it would rush off into the denser bush, leaving us behind. We walked in a small circle, sniffing at the air like dogs. Finally, she chose a direction and we rushed forward. The trees were dotted with scabs. They sat like blisters on the smooth white of birch. They caught our hair as we passed, combing it across our skin. We left a few strands there, and I was happy in the leaving. I followed her to the smell of water, ecstatic, almost crazed with hope, and a small bundle that was building to a fire in my chest. She moved ahead, pushing through the dense bush like a coyote. I was seconds behind her, muscles pumping, face smiling, watching her break free and throw arms forward and backward in the wide strides. She was so beautiful. I wanted to catch her, and I wanted to watch her flee. I could find no satisfaction in my intentions. They were too tiny for the wholeness of her and who I was with her. I loved her. The certainty of the feeling was clear and bright and brown and lean and it hit me in my throat so that breathing became weeping. And then she screamed from another side of the bush. My pace doubled, eyes stinging. I jumped through the bush where she disappeared. I was ready to fight, fists already heavy. I was a man then, not a 16-year-old too skinny and awkward for real strength. And there she was, breathing so heavy her shoulders heaved up and down. She was standing still in a clearing, and I pulled up beside her, grabbing her elbow both to stop myself and to take measure. What? What's wrong? I could barely breathe. I bent forward, hands on my knees, to catch my breath. Her voice was high with excitement. Water. Real water. And I saw a fish right there. She pointed somewhere in the middle where the water tore into frills around rocks. It was a thin brown brook, pulling itself like a ribbon across the curve cut into the rock just ahead. It didn't rage or wave or crash. It bled from somewhere up the hill and carried itself with quiet grace across the tortured ground. Over the glassy rocks, feeding bundles of greens with tenacious roots. Some pulled from the split earth and dangling under the cool surface like old ladies dipping vain, bruised legs into the pool. Oh my God. I fell to my knees, crunching into early spring crust of leaves and dirt, laughing. It was too much. It was too much. Her and the bundle I carried for her, and the water and the bush and everything. Everything made to ash and splinter and seek and to throb by the loss of our parents, our homes, our words, our elder and our Riri, our safety. I laughed until I was crying, and she moved closer, pulling my head to her legs so that I leaned there at first, then clutched at her. She pushed a slight hand into my hair, brushing the branches and leaves out of its length. I pulled at her legs until she fell to my side, and I reached, taking as much of her as I could into my skinny arms, pulling her into my chest, warm from bundling, burning there. There were sounds now that came from a memory of my uncle. My uncle and his old stereo and his army of battered CDs lined up on a kitchen counter, 2 stacks of cooking pots as bookends. He slurred even when he was sober, which was hardly ever. He pointed with palsy fingers. Grab one there, boy. He dropped his arm and took a swig from a brown bottle. And make it a good one, by the Jesus. He growled before taking another swallow. Mom and Dad were back in the house still, trying to figure out what was going on. They'd sent me and Mitch to our uncle's cabin out by Huron since there was whispers of danger and missing kids. I was young enough to remain silent most of the time. Mitch was old enough to be loud, so Uncle preferred my company. Even now, Mitch was running wild with our cousins somewhere outside. I grabbed a thin plastic case from the middle of the stack, then the way Uncle had taught me to choose a card when presented with a fanned-out deck. I hope this one was the good one he asked for. I carried it to where he sat on a low stool with his bottle and belly fighting for room in his lap. He took another deep gulp and wiped his lips with the back of his hand, setting the empty bottle on the ground by his feet. Let's see here. He took the CD from my hands and struggled to focus on the cover. Ho ho! He smiled real big, and I released my breath. Oh boy, you some kind of seer or something? He lowered his gaze to my face like a lion stooping to smell a daisy. I shook my head. I think you must be. This here. He held the case up so I could see a bouquet of flowers reaching for the sky of each other on a pink background with white letters behind them. This here is exactly what we need. He took 2 tries to get onto his feet and took a minute to unplug some things and plug in others, and then finally the stereo wired to life. He deposited the shiny disc, pushed some buttons, and picked his selection, then turned to face me when I had taken his spot on the stool. He closed his eyes and straightened his back up against the counter and waited for the music to begin. Pearl Jam. Real tradish, these boys. It started with an echo turned inside out and a small yell like a man captured. Then the bottom fell out and he escaped and I tumbled along on his release. Snapping drums, a flexing of sound, and a high threading of guitar over a smoother cadence, and then the man sang. Wrapping up and then throwing off. Wrapping up and then throwing off. The sounds were relentless, and I wiggled a bit on the stool, uncomfortable in its strength. "What do you think, boy?" Uncle yelled over the high whine stacked on deep bottom notes. I thought for a long while, long enough for the song to start to spiral back into its first echo, and I answered as honestly as I could manage. "Sounds like if Gray could make noise. That's what I heard here, now, beside the water with this beautiful girl pulled into my bony shell of my arms. I heard capture and releasing a high whine over something that echoed off the trees, growing downwards towards the brook like pious monks in all manner of fancy dress, voluminous green silks peeking out of their austere brown habits. How could anything be as bad as it was when this moment existed in the span of eternity? How could I fear when this girl would allow me this close? How could anything matter but this small miracle of having someone I could love? And I kissed her, and I kissed her, and I didn't stop. I had no way of knowing things would shift again, that I wasn't as alone as I thought after all.